Next, I'm going to talk about the cycle, how it transmits and why it sticks. The social contract does not just degrade in one generation, it transmits. The norms of a household, what is normal, what is possible, what is expected, become the baseline of the children raised in it. And the baseline, once set, is very difficult to raise from the community that set it. Next, I'm going to talk about the boy without a father. There are 3.81 million single parents in the UK. The majority are headed by mothers. This is not a judgment on those mothers. Many of them are doing exceptional work under genuinely difficult conditions. It is a structural observation about what children, and particularly boys, need. 76% of young men in prison in England and Wales had absent fathers, according to the Prison Reform Trust. Boys learn to be men by watching men. When there is no men to watch, they construct masculinity from what is available: the street, the screen, or the gang. None of these are adequate substitutes. The street teaches dominance and threat as the currency of male status. The screen offers fantasy, or increasingly the manosphere. The gang offers belonging, identity, and the clear hierarchy, which is exactly what an adolescent boy needs, delivered with catastrophic consequences. That is not the fault of the absent father in most cases. The family court system and benefit structures that financially disincentivize two-parent households and the cultural normalization of fatherlessness as just different family structure rather than a structural disadvantage for children. These are systemic failures. The fathers who were removed are not the same as the fathers who left. The channel has documented the family court dimension elsewhere. The point here is the consequence, not the cause. The specific damage to boys is worse because boys require more than explicit modelling. Girls tend to internalise social norms more readily. Boys need to see the norm performed. A boy who has never seen a man go to work, pay his bills, treat a woman with respect, and come home, who has never seen what functional male adulthood looks like from the inside, is being asked to achieve something he has never observed. The gap is not motivational, but it is informational. He does not know what he does not know. Next, I'm going to talk about the girl without a model. Women are not exempt from this analysis, and the channel does not pretend that they are. A girl raised in a household with no functioning partnership and no positive male presence and achievement below the social median is being handed a different kind of disadvantage. The traditional female role, wife, mother, the person who maintained the social and emotional infrastructure of a household, was not a prison for most of the women who inhabited it. It was a role with genuine value and genuine dignity. What replaced it in the communities the channel is describing was not liberation. It was the state acting as substitute provider, and motherhood as the available route to a home, an income, and a social role. The single parent who is not a tragic figure, but a functional strategy within the system the state has designed. The consequence, a girl who grows up in that household sees one model of adult womanhood, and it is the model without marriage, without the partner, but with the state filling the gaps. She may not consciously choose to replicate it. She may not even be aware that it is a choice available to be made differently. The aspiration to marry a suitable person before having children, to establish the dual parent household that the data consistently shows produces better outcomes for children, is not in her visible horizon. Not because she is deficient, because it is not modelled. Next, I'm going to talk about the ignorance that is genuine. The hardest thing to say about the cycle, and the most important, is that much of it is maintained by genuine ignorance rather than willful failure. The mother who does not know that her son needs a male role model is not necessarily a bad mother. She knows what she knows. The boy who does not know that professional etiquette exists, that you do not speak to an employer the way you speak to your mates, that you turn up on time, that you dress to signal that you take the opportunity seriously, is not unemployable because he is deficient. He is unemployable because nobody told him what the rules are. The rules of the mainstream economic world are obvious to people who have been shown them, but they are invisible to the people who have not been shown. This is the single most important thing the video wants to say about the communities at the bottom of the cycle. The failure is often not motivational. People want better for their kids. The failure is informational. They do not know what better looks like or what it requires or how the pathway from here to there works. And they cannot transmit what they do not have. So next I'm going to talk about how boys learn and why it matters. Boys do not primarily learn from instruction. They learn from observation and imitation. This is not cultural preference, it is developmental reality. A man who watches men around him and calibrates what male behaviour looks like, what it produces, and what is worth imitating. High quality male role models, men who work, who take responsibility, who treat women with respect, who demonstrate their efforts produces outcomes, produce high quality men from boys. Not perfectly, not automatically, but consistently across cultures and across time. The inverse is equally consistent. A boy raised in a household with no male presence or with only low quality male presence, an absent father, an abusive one, or the peer group on the street, does not construct masculinity from scratch. He imitates what is available. If the dominant man in his environment is dominant through intimidation, crime, or the refusal to be accountable, those characteristics become the template. Not because the boy is deficient, but because the template is what was provided to him. Online communities have dramatically worsened this dynamic. A boy who would previously have been limited to imitating the men immediately around him can now access a global market of male role models curated by the algorithm toward whatever generates the most engagement. The algorithm does not optimize for a healthy male identity. It optimizes for strong emotional reaction. And the content that generates the strongest emotional reaction in a frustrated, directionless young man is the content that tells him his frustration is justified. His failure is someone else's fault, and the solution is dominance rather than development. Next, I'm going to talk about incels and the emotional male. The incel phenomenon, men who define themselves by involuntary celibacy and attribute their failures in the dating market to the malice of women and the structure of society, is not random. It is the predictable output of a specific set of conditions. Boys raised in emotionally led households without male role models who demonstrate objective self-assessment, and schooled in an environment that validated emotion over evidence, that told them their feelings were always valid, that protected them from the discomfort of failure, then released into a dating market that requires exactly the things that were never taught. Confidence built on genuine capability, the ability to absorb rejection without catastrophizing, the willingness to assess their own failures honestly and change. The specific damage of the emotionally led upbringing is this: it produces men who protect their emotions rather than examine their outcomes. When a man cannot objectively assess his own failures, when every criticism is a threat to be defended against rather than information to be used, he cannot improve. He can only excuse. And a man who can only excuse is a man who is stuck. The excuses feel protective, but they are actually the walls of a prison, possibly literally. Accountability is not punishment. It is the mechanism of change. You own the failure. You understand it. You do not repeat it. This is what high quality men model. It is what boys raised without quality men never see.